The ground shook beneath his feet as Marcus Kane stood at the edge of the broken world. His massive body was covered in scars from battles that would have killed lesser beings. Each muscle on his frame told a story of survival, of pain, and of victory against impossible odds. He was the last of the Titan program, a secret project that had transformed ordinary humans into something more, something dangerous, something the gods had never expected. The sky above was not the sky of Earth. It was a swirling mass of purple clouds and golden lightning. This was the realm of ascension, a place where beings called themselves gods and looked down upon all mortal life. For 10,000 years, these beings had ruled over 100 worlds. They took what they wanted. They destroyed what they pleased. And when they found Earth, they thought they had found another easy conquest. They were wrong. Marcus remembered the day the gods came. Their ships had blocked out the sun over every major city. Their voices had spoken directly into the minds of every human being. They called themselves the Celestial Conclave, and they demanded worship. They demanded submission. They demanded that humanity bow down and accept its place as servants. Some humans had bowed. Many had fought. Most had died. But Marcus and the other Titans had done something different. They had studied the gods. They had learned their weaknesses. And then they had begun to hunt them. One by one, the lesser gods had fallen. Their golden blood had stained the streets of Earth's ruined cities. Their screams had echoed across the empty fields. The Celestial Conclave had grown afraid for the first time in their endless existence. These strange creatures, these humans, were not like the other species they had conquered. These beings did not know how to stay defeated. Now, after years of war, Marcus had finally reached the throne world of the gods. He had fought through armies of divine soldiers. He had destroyed weapons that could crack planets in half. He had walked through fire that could melt steel and survived poisons that could kill stars. And now he stood before the final gate, the entrance to the Palace of Eternity. The gate was made of pure light, solid and burning. Ancient symbols covered its surface, symbols that warned all who approached that only gods could pass through. Marcus smiled at those symbols. He had been told many times what he could not do. He had proven every single warning wrong. He placed his hands against the gate. The light burned his skin immediately. He could feel it trying to destroy him at the molecular level. It was divine energy, power that no mortal was ever meant to touch. His muscles screamed in protest. His bones felt like they were turning to ash. But Marcus did not let go. He pushed harder. The gate began to crack. Inside the Palace of Eternity, the remaining gods felt something they had not experienced in millennia. Fear. Real, genuine fear. They could sense the human at their door. They could feel his rage, his determination, his absolute refusal to die. It was like nothing they had ever encountered. Supreme Lord Valdris sat upon his throne of frozen starlight. He was the oldest and most powerful of the Celestial Conclave. He had watched galaxies born and die. He had shaped the laws of physics with his own hands. He had created life and destroyed it on a whim. And now, for the first time, he felt uncertain. The humans should have been dead 1,000 times over. Valdris had sent his best warriors. He had unleashed plagues designed to kill every cell in a human body. He had collapsed mountains and burned oceans. But still the human came. Always the human came. The gate exploded inward. Marcus stepped through the ruins, his body smoking from the divine flames. His skin was blackened in places, already healing with the enhanced regeneration that made Titans nearly impossible to kill. His eyes, however, were clear, focused, burning with a fire that had nothing to do with the gods. 12 gods stood between him and Valdris. Each one was beautiful in that perfect, terrifying way that made mortals feel small and worthless. Each one held weapons forged from the hearts of dying suns. Each one had lived for millions of years and had never known defeat. Marcus cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed through the silent palace like thunder. The first god attacked without warning. Her name was Sarah, and she was called the Swift Death. She could move faster than light itself. Her blade had ended civilizations before their defenders could even blink. She aimed for the human's heart, certain that this would finally end the nightmare. Marcus caught her blade with his bare hand. Blood ran down his fingers, but he did not let go. Sarah's eyes went wide with disbelief. No mortal had ever touched her blade and lived. No mortal had ever seen her coming. Yet this human, this impossible creature, was smiling at her. Marcus pulled her close and drove his fist through her chest. Golden light exploded from the wound as Sarah screamed. She was not dead, not truly, but the pain was beyond anything she had ever imagined. Marcus threw her aside like garbage and turned to face the others. The gods attacked together. Lightning fell from the ceiling. Fire erupted from the floor. Gravity itself twisted and tried to crush the human into a speck of dust. Blades of pure thought sliced at his mind, trying to break his will. Reality bent and warped around him, trying to erase him from existence. Marcus walked through it all. Each step was agony. Each breath was a battle. But he had trained his entire life for this moment. The Titan program had not just made him strong. It had made him unbreakable. His will was forged in the fires of desperation, in the knowledge that if he failed, humanity would be enslaved forever. And Marcus Kane did not know how to fail. He reached the second god and tore off his arm. The third god lost her head to a devastating punch. The fourth was grabbed by the throat and used as a shield against the others. Golden blood painted the palace floor. Divine screams filled the air. The throne room of the gods became a slaughterhouse. Valdris watched from his throne, unable to believe what he was seeing. His children, his chosen warriors, were falling one by one to a mortal. A human, a creature that should have been nothing more than dust beneath his feet. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. And yet it was happening. When the last of the 12 fell, Marcus stood alone before the Supreme Lord. His body was a ruin of torn flesh and broken bones. He had lost count of how many times he should have died in the last few minutes. But he was still standing. He was still breathing. He was still fighting. Valdris rose from his throne. Unlike the others, he did not attack immediately. He studied the human with ancient eyes that had seen the birth of time itself. There was something in this creature that he did not understand. Something that defied all the laws he had created. The human spoke first. His voice was rough from screaming, from breathing smoke and fire. But there was strength in it. Unbroken strength. Marcus told the god that he had come a long way. He had watched his friends die. He had seen his world burn. He had lost everything that had ever mattered to him. But he had kept walking. He had kept fighting. Because that was what humans did. When they were pushed, they pushed back. When they were told they could not win, they found a way. When the entire universe stood against them, they stood against the universe. Valdris asked why. Why did humans fight so hard? Why did they refuse to accept their place in the natural order? They were small. They were weak. They lived for barely a moment in the grand scale of existence. What could possibly drive them to challenge beings who were eternal? Marcus answered with a single word: hope. Hope was what made humans different. Hope was what made them dangerous. Even in their darkest moments, humans hoped for something better. They hoped for their children. They hoped for their future. They hoped that somewhere, somehow, there was light at the end of the darkness. And that hope gave them the strength to do impossible things. Valdris laughed. It was a cold sound, empty of any real joy. He told the human that hope was weakness. It was a lie that mortals told themselves to avoid facing the truth. The truth was that the universe was cruel and empty and meaningless. The gods had accepted this truth long ago. That was why they were strong. Marcus shook his head. He said that the god was wrong. Hope was not weakness. It was the source of all strength. It was the reason he was standing here in the heart of enemy territory, when every logical calculation said he should be dead. The gods had become powerful by accepting the darkness. Humans had become powerful by lighting fires against it. The final battle began without further words. Valdris unleashed the full force of his power. The palace cracked and groaned under the strain. Stars outside the realm began to die, their energy being pulled into the Supreme Lord's attack. This was divine wrath in its purest form. This was the power that had created galaxies. Marcus met it head-on. His body broke and rebuilt itself over and over. His bones shattered and reformed stronger than before. His muscles tore and healed in the same instant. The Titan program had designed him for exactly this moment, for a battle against the impossible. Every cell in his body was a weapon. Every fiber of his being was dedicated to one purpose: victory. The fight lasted for what seemed like hours. The palace was destroyed around them. The realm itself began to collapse. Valdris threw everything he had at the human, power that had conquered 1,000 worlds, and still the human came forward. Step by step, inch by inch, refusing to fall, refusing to break. In the end, it was the god who broke first. Valdris felt something crack inside him. Not his body, but something deeper. His certainty. His absolute belief in his own superiority. For the first time in his eternal existence, he understood what it meant to face an opponent who simply would not give up. He understood what made humans so terrifying. They did not fight to win. They fought because fighting was who they were. Victory was just a bonus. Marcus reached the god and wrapped his hands around the ancient throat. Valdris looked into human eyes and saw something that made him tremble. Not hatred, not rage. Just absolute, unshakable determination. The human spoke his final words to the god. He said that the celestial conclave was over. Their reign of terror was finished. Humanity would rebuild. Humanity would survive. And if any other gods ever came to Earth looking for easy prey, they would find the same thing Valdris had found. A species that did not know how to die. The throne room echoed with the sound of thunder as Marcus squeezed. The Supreme Lord screamed and then fell silent. And in that moment of silence, something extraordinary happened. Across the 100 worlds that the celestial conclave had conquered, the chains of divine slavery began to break. The mental bonds that had held billions of beings in servitude simply dissolved. Creatures of 1,000 different species looked up at the sky and felt something they had forgotten existed: freedom. Marcus stood among the ruins of the Palace of Eternity, breathing heavily. His body was already starting to heal, though it would take weeks to fully recover from this battle. He looked around at the destruction he had caused and felt nothing but exhaustion. The war was over. Humanity had won. The gods were dead. But as he began the long journey home, Marcus knew that this was not truly the end. The universe was vast and old and full of dangers. There would be other threats, other enemies, other beings who looked at humanity and saw weakness. They would learn the same lesson the Celestial Conclave had learned. Humans were small. Humans were mortal. Humans lived brief lives in a dark and uncaring universe. But within every human heart burned a fire that could never be extinguished. A fire called hope. A fire called defiance. A fire that would burn until the last star went dark and beyond. The muscular titan walked through the collapsing realm, leaving behind the bodies of gods. Above him, thunder roared across the shaking sky. And somewhere, far away, on a small blue planet that had refused to die, humanity looked up at the stars and waited for their champion to come home. The universe had tried to break them. The universe had failed. And now, for the first time in history, the universe would have to learn a new truth. Humanity was no longer prey. Humanity was the hunter. And the hunt was only beginning.